May 25, 1971. President Richard M. Nixon arrives in Mobile, accompanied by his younger daughter Julie and her husband, David Eisenhower, grandson of Nixon's former boss. Greeting them as they step off of Air Force One is Alabama Governor and presidential contender, George Wallace. Despite an early morning rain, an estimated 75,000, one-fifth of Mobile's population, show up to watch the president pass. President Nixon stops his motorcade 4 times to personally greet onlookers. First, at the intersection of Conception and Government Street. Here, he loses his right cufflink while shaking hands. A Bishop Tulane High School senior, Deborah Norman, catches it. Despite her mother being left speechless, Deborah is quoted at the time saying, quote, "It looked like a regular businessman's cufflink, but it was the president's." Later, Deborah writes the president to tell them that she has found his cufflink and to ask if she could keep it as a memento of that day. Dick Nixon would respond and ask for it back. Along the route, supporters waved signs to witness their solidarity to the president with such slogans as, "When in Vietnam, why not?" Later reports state that only 12 student demonstrators and 2 University of South Alabama professors show any signs of protest. Police quickly destroy their placards as other spectators cheer. Nixon next stops at Royal Street just off of Government and then again on Royal in front of the First National Bank. He gives Paige Brooks a pin before making his final stop to personally greet the Azalea Trail maids. He asks if they are 18, presumably to find out if they will soon be able to legally vote. Once at Pier 5 of the Alabama State Docks, the president joins Governor Wallace and several dignitaries for the official commemoration of the start of construction on the Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway. The red carpet on the platform had been contributed by the Gaffer's Department Store of Mobile. After the ceremonies, it would become the carpet in the bedroom of Mrs. Fred Bortram, wife of the Gaffer's chain president. 5 governors, 4 U.S. senators, 10 representatives, and U.S. Postmaster General Red Blount are present on that platform. To open, Governor Wallace, on behalf of the people of Alabama, introduces the president by saying he has, quote, "honored us greatly." Indeed, the last incumbent president to visit Mobile was Woodrow Wilson in 1913, the year Nixon was born. Nixon makes note of this in his 17-minute speech. He even mentions in passing the topic of Wilson's address, a call for an end to American imperialism. The Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway had actually first been conceived in 1808. Essentially, the Tenn-Tom, as it is sometimes called, is a man-made waterway uniting the Tennessee and Tombigbee rivers, thereby providing quicker shipping access to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, for the first time, the President of the United States had allocated $1 million in federal funding to the Army Corps of Engineers to begin the project in earnest. Requiring 310 million cubic yards of soil to be moved, the excavation will be one of the largest in history, more than the Panama Canal and twice that of the Suez. Before it will be completed, the waterway will twice be the subject of environmental litigation. The original estimate is for an end of construction in 9 years at a cost of $400 million. It will take 12 and cost $2 billion. Nixon's interest in the Tenn-Tom waterway could be viewed as an extension of his Southern strategy for re-election. Having almost had the 1968 election go before the House of Representatives, due to the narrow margin of electoral votes caused by Wallace, Nixon feared his Southern competitor the most. Indeed, in 1970, Nixon backed Wallace's Democratic opponent, Albert Brewer, to the tune of $400,000, contributing a third of Brewer's gubernatorial campaign budget. And even as they shake hands and tread the red carpet at Pier 5, Nixon has over 75 employees of the Internal Revenue Service dedicated to investigating in detail every financial move of Wallace, his brother, and anyone dealing with the state of Alabama. Many will speculate that Wallace's decision to leave his independent party and run as a Democrat, thereby increasing Nixon's chances, is a direct result of the findings. 10 days shy of a year later, on May 15, 1972, Governor Wallace will be shot 4 times at a campaign stop 25 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. 21-year-old Milwaukee native Arthur Bremer will be dressed in red, white, and blue and wearing Wallace for President campaign buttons. The would-be assassin will ask to shake the governor's hand before sticking a gun to his gut and firing. Due to the ensuing chaos in which Wallace supporters take down the shooter, Bremer will neglect to shout his pre-scripted catchphrase, "A penny for your thoughts." Bremer's attempt will eventually inspire Paul Schrader and Martin Scorsese's film, Taxi Driver, which will in turn inspire John Hinckley Jr. to attempt an assassination of President Ronald Reagan. Though conspiracy theorists will connect Nixon and his Watergate cronies to the attempt on Wallace's life in that Laurel, Maryland parking lot, on the day of the shooting, President Nixon will call the hospital to offer prayers to Mrs. Wallace and will issue a statement deploring the, quote, senseless and tragic incident.
Mrs. Wallace, I just wanted you to know that we were terribly concerned about this shooting of your husband, and we just hope that and pray that everything goes well. I remember the time we had that nice visit down in Alabama.
Yes, sir, I thought you did your right suit after that trip.
Yeah, that's right. How are things going?
Well, he's doing very well. He's still conscious, and I wasn't too concerned, but he doesn't have much feeling, and he's not able to move from his waist down.
They haven't a test on that yet. Are they going to have an X-raying or what?
Yes, sir, and the X-ray shows a bullet against his backbone. I don't know whether it penetrated it or not.
He is conscious?
Yes, sir. I told him I was coming in here to talk to you.
Yeah? How's his spirit?
Well, that's what I just...
Well, you tell him to just keep his spirit and tell him that all of us people in politics that expect that some dangers, and that that Mrs. Nixon and I both send our very best wishes, and you tell him directly that I call. Will you please?
I told him before I left that I was coming to talk to you, and so he knew it, and it means a lot to him, and we do appreciate you calling.
Well, you got to say one thing to him. He's a fighter.
Well, he's liable to be out there running against you in November.
Theodore Roosevelt, was shot
Yes, sir.
when he was campaigning as a third-party candidate in the final election.
Yes, sir.
And he went on and finished his speech.
Yes, sir.
Tell him the politicians are too tough unless they hit him a little better than this guy was.
Yes, sir. He didn't have the best name in the world, but he might have done him a little damage. But I think he's going to be all right. And I told him, I'd tell you he'd probably be out there running against you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you for calling.
Nixon, however, will also speak that day, on tape, with his special counsel Charles Colson, about the possibility of breaking into Bremer's apartment and replacing any Nixon campaign literature with McGovern's.
You see, Chuck, I'm really concerned that we don't handle this the way the Kennedy thing was handled. I agree not to be on top of it, and I'm trying to get Ehrlichman out to the ballet or some goddamn thing, but...
Well, let me give you what I know about it, Mr. I think that, thank God, that you shook people up there for a few minutes, because they were not doing the job.
As usual,
The Secret Service were keeping the FBI out.
That's right.
I've now got the Bureau in. I've told them what I want. This fellow was picked up once before. And on November 18th, 1971, he was parked in an unusual place. I want them to tell me what was going on then politically in the area. They've been through his apartment. They found a lot of stuff he's written. He's obviously demented.
And is he a left-winger or right-winger?
Well, he's going to be a left-winger by the time we get through, I think.
Okay, good. Keep at that.
Yeah, I just wish that, God, that I'd thought sooner about finding a little literature out there, but maybe a little late, although I've got one source that maybe you could think about that. I mean, if they found it near his apartment, that would be helpful.
Colson will later visit Alabama himself when, upon being convicted of obstruction of justice relating to the Watergate hearings, he will spend 7 months in Alabama's Maxwell Correctional Facility. Arthur Bremer, whom even Wallace felt was part of a larger plot, will be sentenced to 63 years in prison. Among charges brought against Bremer, violating the Civil Rights Act of 1968 by assaulting a candidate for elective office. George Wallace, his spine pierced by the bullets, will become permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Despite winning the Democratic primaries in Maryland, Michigan, Tennessee, and North Carolina, Wallace will lose to McGovern, who will in turn lose the presidential election to Nixon. All said and done, Richard M. Nixon's visit to Mobile, Alabama lasted 104 minutes, in which time he shook 100 feet of hands.
On that point, do you find a change in attitude towards you by politicians outside of the South?
Some will support me out of genuine conviction, some, and some won't. But I would say a lot of politicians, and I'm not saying all of them, would like to see me just, go away quietly.